Jazzcast Pros.
What is one of the scariest parts of an entrepreneur's journey? There are many, but this specific thing that entrepreneurs do, when you hear from seasoned entrepreneurs who have multi-seven-figure businesses or have hit their first $100,000 month or things like that, when they did this, it's when they felt like they really leveled up. And what is that thing? They hired. They delegated, they outsourced, they got somebody else to do the thing that is outside of their zone of genius. So for me in this podcast, for example, it is having Jazzy do my production. So outsourcing has been the best thing that I have done for this podcast. If you are a solopreneur, entrepreneur, it may feel really scary to do your first hire. In my conversation today with Maryann, we lay out things that you should be aware of when you're making your first hire, your first outsource, your first 1099 contractor. What should you educate yourself with? What should you know? What should you be aware of? What questions should you answer before you decide if that is a good idea? Maryann has been an HR executive for a long time, and so she is an HR executive and an entrepreneur. So I thought it'd be really fun to bring her in and have her answer some really interesting questions about hiring employees. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the current or aspiring solopreneur, navigate the messy middle so you can make both an income and an impact. Hi, I'm Maryann, and I love creating safe spaces for women to be courageous in their dreams. After spending a decade working in sales for a startup and talking with hundreds of other women entrepreneurs, I know it can be lonely, but you can do this. We are having impactful conversations with people walking similar paths to you, so pull up a seat. This is High Vibe Table Talks. Let's talk to Maryann. Maryann, can you tell us who you are, where you're located, and who you serve?
So I am Maryann Rivera-Dannert, and I am the founder and CEO of MRD Empowerment Solutions, which is, I like to call it a tree. So a tree has branches. So some of those branches that I have is my podcast, which is Fearless Fridays with Maryann. I also have a magazine, which is Fabulousness Unleashed. And I am also the co-author of 14, 15, 16, I've lost track, anthology projects and some workbooks and things like that. And I am also a certified life and leadership coach. And who I serve is the woman who is stuck. I would say she's in her mid-30s. She's a professional and she wakes up one day and notices that something is wrong. She feels stuck. She feels unfulfilled and she knows that she's destined for more. And I am right here in Rochester, New York.
Awesome. And I love that we're having this conversation too. We both are under the same podcast group, Jazzcast Pros. That's how we met. It's also really cool to talk to other women who feel called to support the same type of person that I do. And it just is a testament to both you and like our visions of building bigger tables, not higher fences, because even though we serve the same sort of people, we can serve them in different ways. We can serve them collaboratively. And so how did you kind of start down that journey? I know that you obviously wear a lot of hats with all of the things that you just named off that you do. And you also work a 9-to-5 as a head of HR. So tell us how you balance all those things and kind of how you got to serving the type of person that you do now with all of your offerings.
Yeah. So in addition to everything that I mentioned, like you said, I am also the director of operations and human resources for a local nonprofit organization. And I actually started my HR career by accident about, 13 years ago now. Can't believe it's been that long. So my background is administrative assistant, executive assistant, anything clerical, administrative, that was me. And in 2011, I started an admin assistant position for a local nonprofit organization. And they did not have an official HR department. So all the heads were pretty much doing their own thing in their own department. We had an audit by an HR professional and attorney. Actually, he wasn't an attorney. He was an HR professional that had employment law experience. And there were a lot of deficiencies that if any government agency came in, we could probably have been shut down because, again, there were a lot of deficiencies going on. Nonprofit, and it was a Christian nonprofit, so they didn't accept any government money. And I say that because funds were very limited. So it was kind of like, well, we really can't afford to have the consultant fix all these deficiencies. I've always had an interest in human resources. So I was I kind of volunteered, to do job descriptions, to write policies and procedures because I was a Google master. Just search and you can find the answers. And it slowly became, well, that's HR, go see Maryann. That's HR, go see Maryann. And it's like, wait a minute. Maryann is getting paid as an admin assistant, not as an HR professional.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a promotion. I was put into HR. They helped me go back to school. And 13 years later, I'm still doing HR, which I absolutely love, which is why I'm still here. In addition to my personal entrepreneurship business. And I got into entrepreneurship because again, a little bit by accident, I loved photography. And I loved photography, but I didn't niche down. So I was doing everything, weddings, engagements, maternity shoots, headshots, everything. In addition to my regular 9 to 5. So I was literally working 7 days a week. I was doing way too much, as some people say. So I had a business coach. She asked me how was everything going? And I expressed my frustrations, told I was getting ready to give up photography. And she said, well, you don't have to give it up as your passion, but maybe as a business. So what do people go to you for? And we started talking about that. She suggested becoming a life coach. I asked her, what did that entail? What was that? And here I am. And I've been in my entrepreneurship journey for about 12, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then from there, so I started out as a life coach and then got into authorship. So then I became an author, and then eventually came the podcast, and most recently came the magazine.
So what I love in a lot of stories that I dive into and a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with is that their current clients are previous versions of themselves. And so it kind of sounds like you woke up one day and were working way more than you wanted to. You weren't fulfilled in the life that you were leading, on the verge, and maybe those are me putting words in your mouth. You can expand upon it, but on the verge of burnout and this is not what I want to continue doing. And so now where you are over a decade later, what would you tell the previous version of yourself who was in that spot and had to make those choices?
I love that question. So yes, when it comes to the entrepreneur side, I am becoming now the person that I needed growing up. So I have been, through trauma, adversities, and things like that. And not having someone that I could turn to has led me to make some choices that were, very questionable. But then a point came in my life that was kind of like, okay, I have to pause. Things have to change. And because of that, I made the changes that I made in my life. And today I'm becoming the person that I needed. Everything that I do ultimately is to help women, particularly because I'm a woman, to live a fearless, fabulous, and free life, healing their inner child and nurturing their inner child. So you will often hear me say, whether it's on my podcast or in another recording or something like that, or in any of my writings, that everything that I do is for little Maryann.
Oh.
It's for the little girl in me, for the little you, for the little whoever's listening, to know that it's not the things that happen to us. They are not our full story. They are a part of the story. But you, as an adult now, have the option to make certain choices in your life to change the trajectory of your life. So that's who I am becoming. And I would tell the person, make sure that you connect with somebody that you admire, whether it's mentors, whether it's coaches. And the thing about mentors is that they don't have to be someone that you actually know face to face. It could be somebody that you admire in social media. Some of the, people that I admire on social media, I've been following them for years, and through manifesting, doing the work, healing, putting myself out there, I have actually connected with these individuals, in person. And I have had the opportunity to share with them and say to them, because of you, I am who I am today.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm very big on community and surrounding yourself with people who uplift, support, hear you, want to, builds bigger tables. And sometimes that is listening to their podcast, or reading their book. I have this We Should All Be Millionaires workbook with Rachel Rogers, and she is such a inspiration to me, and I get to spend time with her every morning when I work through this workbook. It doesn't have to be, sometimes it is hiring a business coach that can really dive in with you if you aren't at the space to be able to afford that at the moment, or that's too much for you.
Right.
Getting a workbook, listening to free podcasts, joining Facebook groups. Those are all little ways you can create your own community. And really, we're so inundated with so much from social media, TV, the world at the moment. You have to be very specific about how you curate what comes in, or else you can just be inundated with negativity, scarcity, the mindset stuff. But I also love that you talk about healing the inner child so much, because talking about being fearless, I think a lot of our fear does come from childhood trauma, from stress that we incurred, or beliefs that we built up about ourselves during those formative years that we have to kind of work through and process to be and live the life that we really want to live. So that is really, really incredible. The topic that I really wanted to dive in with you, and I love that you have this expertise, because you are wearing both hats right now at the moment of the head of HR and an entrepreneur. And I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs, the journey of bringing on staff, whether you're hiring your first person, or you're bringing in a contractor, or you're starting to delegate. There is a turning point when you become an entrepreneur where you have to work on your business and not in your business, and you have to start to delegate. And so I would love to hear some advice from you as far as when someone is in that process of hiring their first person, or outsourcing, or bringing in, whether they are W-2, a 1099, anything like that, just some pitfalls that you have seen that we can start to understand, and just have our eyes open to what we should be on the lookout for, or what we should put in place so that we are supporting those people the best way we can.
I love that. And so the first thing that I will say is that HR is not a one size fits all. It is very different. And I learned that, I knew that it was different because of my HR background, but then being hands-on in a different environment, it was kind of like, oh, really? So I am originally from Rochester, New York, as we said earlier. But in 2017, I moved to Florida. And I was there for about 4 years. And then from Florida, moved to Texas. And then from Texas, moved back here to Rochester in 2022, 2 years ago. So when I first got to Florida and I started my HR job, I'm doing things based on the knowledge that I knew in New York. And it was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. Really? We don't what?
You were thrust into the wild, wild west, huh?
Yes, I was. And so one of the things, for example, in New York State, manufacturing employees get paid every week. So if you are delivering a service, so usually people in manufacturing are producing something, you're to be paid every week. So in Florida and Texas, that's not the case. Get paid every 2 weeks. So that was very interesting. So my first advice would be is that whatever state you are in, get to connect with the local HR groups. So SHRM, which stands for Society for Human Resource Management, they usually have local chapters also. And there is a fee, depending on what level, you want to join in. SHRM is, again, it's national. So it's SHRM.org. And once you're in the website in there, you can look up your local area and connect with that chapter. Get involved in those meetings, get involved with the local chapter, get involved with the national chapter, and know your laws. Know your federal laws, your local laws, your state laws. because although there could be certain federal laws, does not mean that those are the same as state laws. And then just because the state has certain laws doesn't mean that they're the same locally or even in your own county. So for example, let's take federal law when it comes to minimum wage. The minimum wage federal law is $7.25. And sadly, there are some states that do pay that low, $7.25. So when it comes to the minimum wage, you cannot pay under that amount. You can pay higher, but you cannot pay under. In New York State, the minimum wage could be $15 or it could be $16. So New York State is $15. However, New York City is $16. Here in Monroe County, because it's the rest of New York State, is $15. And there's increment, it goes up once a year, it goes up a certain amount. So in 2025, it's going to go up to $15.50, I believe it is, $15.50. And then in 2026, it's going to go up to $16. Again, that's in upstate New York, Monroe County. So that's, again, very important to know. And laws change. Literally, you could read a law right now and probably by the end of today, midnight, it'll be something new. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to stay abreast to those laws. And when in doubt, always select the law, the policies, the processes that are in favor of the employee, not the employer, of the employee. Especially in New York. New York State is a very employee-friendly state.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very interesting. That's a great perspective of like, you're never going to be an expert in everything. So you have to lean on the communities that are around you. So finding something like SHRM, I think, is a great, great first step. So, for me right now, I do have like longevity goals as far as bringing on an employee or like a VA or something like that at some point. Yeah. It's not in the next probably 12 months. So what would you say for someone like me who has those thoughts that are coming up in the future? What can I put in place right now that will help me when it does come time to hire an employee? Because I'm sure that the checklist for someone who's bringing someone on is very long, but I'm sure there are things that I can do right now to ease that process.
Yeah, definitely. So I will say, again, get familiarized with SHRM, the local chapter, start attending those meetings, and get connected with an employment law attorney, because employment law is very different than an accident law, something like that. So make sure that you have those connections. And also figure out if you actually need an employee, or do you need an intern or a contract worker. And some of the differences is that, for example, an intern, you can have either a paid intern or you can have an intern who is doing it for college credits. If they're doing it for college credits, you have to make sure that they are learning something that aligns with their major. So you can't have, for example, an engineering, intern that's going to be doing admin work or shredding papers. They're not learning anything. Yeah. It has nothing to do with, their major. So that person will have to get paid. And then also, if you decide to have a contract worker, and a lot of organizations do get in trouble when they use contract workers and things like that, because ultimately the biggest difference is, how do you introduce the person? Do you have them on your org chart, which you don't want to? You don't want to have a contract worker on your org chart. You don't want to dictate what their schedule is. It's the other way around. They tell you what their hours are. They pretty much basically handle their own schedule. But if you start mandating, you have to be in the office from 8 till 5, I need you to work on task A, B, C, and things like that. Where now you're talking to an employee. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to an employee, benefits are a part of it. Health insurance, there's taxes, implications, and things like that. There are also information that you have to provide to the state. So again, speaking clearly for New York State, within 20 days of you hiring an employee, you have to provide information to the government. The employee's name, date of birth, date of hire, social security name. You have to provide employer's name, the employer's address, and also the employee identification number, which is your like IRS number.
Mm-hmm.
You have to provide this information within 20 days. And then again, you have to decide, are you going to offer benefits? Are you not going to offer benefits? What does that look like? In New York State, if you have 50 or more full-time employees, you have to offer insurance. There's no question about it. You have to offer insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If you have under 50 employees, you don't have to necessarily offer different plans, but you do have to be able to provide something.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, focusing more on knowing the local laws, because the local laws, again, speaking here locally in Rochester, New York, we have laws, for example, ban the box. And what does that mean? Ban the box. If you have ever worked at a job, sometimes applications will say, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Mm-hmm.
You can't ask that in Rochester, New York. You can do a job offer contingent on a successful background check, and it will screen for those things. And then at that time, you have the option to rescind the job offer if something, is found.
Mm-hmm.
Then also there's a salary history ban. So once upon a time, applications that will ask, well, how much money did you make in your last employer? Can't ask that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. You have to also provide what's called a anti-wage theft form within the first 3 days. I think it's the first 3 days of hiring someone. And basically that lets them know, okay, I'm going to offer you the job of, secretary at $20 an hour. You're going to be hourly. You get paid every 2 weeks. And I'm not going to be taking anything extra out of your pay. Because again, back in the day, things will happen. And whenever there's a law that's been implemented, it's because something has happened, that a law has become a law. And then again, just making sure that you're up to date on, the minimum wage and things like that. So I would say get connected with who SHRM is, your local chapter, start making those connections, start asking questions. A lot of Google. You can find anything on Google. And SHRM also does have an option, depending on what membership you sign up under, that if you have, you want to know the laws in New York, you put that in. What is the minimum wage law in New York and things like that? Because again, it's national. So they can tell you what the laws are in New York and California and things like that.
Yeah. So just starting to get educated, I think will at least open your eyes to what is going to be required. Because if you're like, I really could use bringing on an employee, or I would really love to have someone who could come and be an, administrative assistant. And then you have to once okay, here are the taxes that I'm going to have to do. Here's the onboarding I'm going to have to do. Here are the decisions I'm going to have to make. At least being educated on those, you can weigh them, when you need it. Okay, I at least know what that process is going to look like for myself, versus being totally blind. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think I should hire someone. And now you have to take the education on top of taking all the action to do so.
Yeah. And another option too, especially for somebody like you, let's say that you're, when you're ready, but you're not sure, you can also contract with a temporary agency. So the only downfall with a temporary agency is that you do have to pay a markup value. So if your desire to pay the employee, let's say it's $15 an hour, you're paying the actual temp agency maybe $25, $30 an hour. And then they take their cut because they're handling everything. They're paying the taxes, insurance, and everything. Basically, the employee just shows up.
Right.
And if you notice, things are not working out, you can just contact the agency and say, it's not working out. Please don't send Bob again. Find me somebody else. And then they'll send you somebody else. And along the lines of that, when you do hire someone, make sure that you have the right screening questions. Make sure that you also know what's appropriate and legal to ask and things like that. So again, things like SHRM. I keep going back to SHRM because that's like your Bible in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Making sure that you know the proper things to ask, the things that you are allowed to ask, not ask, and things like that. And ultimately, I was told this by a mentor years ago, be slow to hire, but fast to fire. because you don't want to hang on to somebody who is causing havoc, not working out, because the longer you hold on to that person, the harder it's going to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then once your organization, your business starts growing and you start having multiple employees, that one bad seed
becomes a cancer.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. I love that piece of advice. And there's so many more things I could dig into, but I'm really happy to kind of use that as a final little nugget because we are running up on time. So Maryann, are you ready to get into the lightning round questions?
Yes, let's go.
All right. What is a must-read book?
Ooh, I will say High Road Leadership by John Maxwell.
Ooh, okay. What does creativity mean to you?
Ooh, creativity is allowing the juices to just flow and create something, make something that just brings me joy.
Mm-hmm. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Be true to yourself.
What is something that's on your bucket list?
Oh my gosh. I've accomplished so many things this past year. I would have to say, okay, so let's go with a vacation that's a bucket list, is to go to Tahiti. I've traveled all over the place, Mexico, China, Bali, but Tahiti's like that one place that if I never travel again after I've gone to Tahiti, I'm okay.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. What is the coolest shit you've done in the last year or are currently working on?
I would say finally getting my John Maxwell certification.
Yeah.
After 10 years, I actually reached out to my advisor. I said, you probably don't have this information, but can you check when we first started talking? And it was August of 2014.
Wow.
10 years
Well
ago.
done. Congrats. And that's, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, it's been so long. Why even go back to that? So that's really impressive that you, such an important quality of being an entrepreneur is consistency and staying with it, because every day is going to not look the same. So well done on you.
Thank you.
This was such a great conversation. Where can people find you, find your podcast? If they want to connect with you, where should I direct them?
So I would say my website has everything about me. My website is Maryann.Rivera-Dannert.com. So no hyphen. So MaryanN.com. You can find the link there to my podcast, to the magazine, and the different books and my coaching and everything.
Awesome. And I think it's so cool that you came out with a magazine. I'm a big library person. I can't read books on, I shouldn't say can't, I've never tried, but I just love a physical copy of something. I think everything is so digital, and especially being in a space where I stare at a computer screen and a phone screen a lot throughout the day, being able to disconnect, close my laptop, and open a physical magazine, a physical book is so powerful. Actually, my husband, daughter, and I all have magazines on the dining room table. And as we eat, we're all perusing through our magazines all about different things and talk about stuff in them. So I think it is very, very cool that you started something like a magazine. That's amazing. We will put all of that in the show notes in case you missed how to spell out everything. It will all be there. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Maryann.
Thank you for having me.
I hope that you took something away from this. You understand not only is this really important, even if there's no urgency to it at the moment, it's something you can do. And taking one step towards that today for your business's freedom and reducing burnout. So if you like that episode, please leave a review. Those are always so helpful on whatever platform you listen to this. Until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.